Welcome to the Morning Nerdy News. I'm your host, Gray Falcon. Today we've got updates from Xbox, we've got information on Prime Day, and we have leaks for the new AMD GPUs. But we're going to start off into some positive news here. So over on Xbox Wire, they've done an article about who are Xbox ambassadors. What they're doing here is they're trying to draw people into their Xbox ambassadors program, and it has where you can become an ambassador. And the whole point of this is to get people in the community who care about gaming, who want a positive experience for everyone out there. Someone going to their PTO meeting and educating parents, or just typing good game after every single match. Doing little things to be positive, to make sure that gaming is something that everyone wants to be a part of, and trying to remove those negative influences out there by simply being a positive influence and through education. If you are interested in having this, I recommend that you go on over to Xbox Wire, read through their article, click on the link, and it'll take you to where it has to become an ambassador. I'll also put this link down below. In some other information in regards to Xbox, we have a hands-on impression with the Xbox Series X. Now, these are starting to pop up on all these different websites, but I chose to preview the IGN one. And right here we have Ryan McCaffrey. Now, this just went up first thing this morning, which is part of the reason why this is a little late today, because I wanted to listen through some of these, get the impressions, and I really liked Ryan. So he goes in and talks about all the incredible things that this does. And the biggest point that this makes is how fast the games load. So if you've been on PC, this isn't a surprise. If you've been using a 3.0 PCI Express NVMe SSD, then you'll know what these experiences are like already. But over on console side, this is huge. But what's really impressive here is how fast you can transition between games. And he shows the load times between going from one game, popping over into Control, and how fast that is, and then gives a comparison of how slow it is in comparison on an Xbox One X. He talks about how incredible it looks standing up on a shelf, and how it looks like a log if you turn it on its side. Overall, a very positive presentation. The only thing I can say is when he goes to push the button for turning the system on by physically pushing the button, you hear that plasticky click. And that's something I'm not a fan of. I don't like the clicky buttons. I don't like when you go in and you hear that plastic push, because that makes me think that could break easily. Now, most of us are not turning on our systems by walking up and touching that button, but it is a drastic change from the touch sensor that's on the current system, where you just walk up, put your finger on it, and it turns on and off. And the same thing with my mic here. I love how I just... and you can hear me again, but there's no clicky noise to it. And unfortunately, it seems Xbox has decided to go with a physical button this time, and it sounds cheap for what the overall make and build of this are. Now, that's really just me nitpicking. Like I said, most people don't even touch that button. 99% of the time, they're turning it on and off with their controller. Given that they've put so much money and engineering into the rest of them, it's understandable that cost cutting is going to happen at some point. Epic has acquired SuperAwesome, and SuperAwesome creates a kid-safe tech. So they wanted to go in and have access to the software that's already being licensed by companies like Lego, in order to ensure that products being presented to children are appropriate, that they're going out and giving them a safe environment. So whether it be in gaming or in advertising, this is something that exists out there to ensure that they are only getting things appropriate for them. And I think this is a huge boon for them. This says we want to provide a safe environment for everyone. They'll be able to implement this into their gaming tech, into hopefully their store information. So if you have kids that are purchasing things, you might be able to have this algorithm ensure that they're not getting things for games that are quite inappropriate for someone who could be 10, 11, 12 years old or younger, or maybe even a little bit older, depending upon the maturity of your child. And then I'm going to go over into some more Xbox news. Bethesda's Todd Howard shares a crazy little trick that let Morrowind run on Xbox. You may have heard this already, but There was an interview the other week, and Todd Howard talked about how on the original Xbox there were memory issues. Morrowind was such a large game that Xbox had to come back and tell them, hey, we have a little secret sauce for how you can get this to work better. So when memory was running low, you could go and hit a load screen, and apparently the Xbox would reboot itself while it was in the load screen. You'd never know. You were watching the load screen the entire time, but those load screens would sometimes take longer than expected, and that was the system actually rebooting itself in order to be able to free up that memory and bring in new assets. We've got some information coming out on Amazon for their Prime Day, and their Prime Day is officially happening October 13th through the 14th. They already have some pre-deals going up, like the early Prime Day deals for the Echo Dots, and they show information for pricing. This is primarily their stuff, so they do this pretty often when they know that a Prime Day is coming up. They'll lead up to it with specials on their product. And now keep in mind, you want to look through and check out these other deals, because it's not uncommon for them to have special deals that aren't available on Prime Day. As I mentioned last week, I received my bike at a significant discount. I saved about $300-400 by buying it on a deal before Prime Day, and then on Prime Day the bike was back up to regular price, where it has sat for most of the time since then. So even a couple of years later, you can't really get that bike on a lower price. You might just find a really awesome deal here in the coming days. We have the DualSense Teardown. Tidux over here has posted the images, and you can see the full controller built here. You can see the back plate, and that would be the front plate with the board removed that has the controllers, and just how it all comes apart and looks from every angle and view. That gives us a good idea of how easy it's going to be to repair, pull apart, what it looks like inside, how you might be able to get an idea of haptics in this if you have kind of an engineering background, to take a look in here and see what all this does. I'll be excited to see what Gamers Nexus does with this. They always go in and do a teardown. If you haven't seen it, they did it with Stadia, and the controller was so difficult to pull apart, they actually took a Dremel to it and tore it apart. They're willing to do whatever it takes to tear these things apart, see how difficult they are, and show what's going on inside. And continuing on with hardware news, we have some rumors/leaks about the AMD Navi 21, 22, and 23. Now, these are technical specifications that show that the Navi GPU will have up to 80 CUDA cores, and then this is in the Navi 21. The Navi 21 has 80 CUDA cores, 2.2 GHz boost clock, and 22.5 teraflops of compute power, according to this leak. And then the Navi 22, which has half the CUDA cores at 40, with a 2.5 GHz boost clock and a 12.8 teraflops of compute power. This gives us kind of an idea of the floating point comparison. We'll be able to take this information and extrapolate that to give a comparison to NVIDIA's cards. However, again, the floating point information is not the end-all, be-all for all cards. That floating point information is just one aspect. It doesn't take into a comparison the ray tracing ability, doesn't take into the AI, doesn't mention anything in here about DLSS compatibility, which is the AI technology that allows it to fill in information that's missing. NVIDIA has a lot to do with that, so I don't know if we'll actually see that as something that AMD can have without licensing it, or if they'll have something of their own. Now, in the past, they have had kind of their similar own type of tech for that, but it isn't as advanced as DLSS is. And as far as we can tell, they have not put nearly the effort into those drivers and software for that. The 12.8 teraflops of compute, that gives us kind of an idea of what the Xbox has in its system. We'll have to find out for sure once everything releases, but I would expect that this Navi 22 is going to be similar to what we're seeing in the Xbox Series X right now. In final news, judge temporarily balks Trump's order for banning TikTok downloads. The 20th was the date that it was supposed to be stopped by Trump's executive order. WeChat was completely shut off, and TikTok was allowed to operate without downloads, but it had extenuating circumstances to prove that its deal with Oracle and Walmart were going to work out. Well, a judge has come in and stopped the executive order completely. And the Trump administration has said that they are going to go ahead and follow along with the judge's order. So at this point, we're going to just have to wait and see what happens. So you will be able to continue to use TikTok. Hopefully, if you are a TikTok user, the Oracle and Walmart deal that was set up will be good enough to ensure that privacy and safety measures are taking place, and this will continue on without any further interruption. So we'll keep an eye on this and we'll update you as we get more information. Thanks for hanging out. Remember, if you haven't already, click the follow button. If you are over on YouTube, remember to click the subscribe button and follow me on Twitter as The Gray Falcon. Until next time, have a good one.